Damon Rivers sat quietly on the wooden steps of his small home, watching the two bright suns slowly disappear behind the tall crystal mountains of Drachma. At 12 years old, he had not said a single word in 3 whole years. The silence around him felt heavy, but it was a silence he had grown used to. Dr. Kenya Johnson walked out of her small lab next to their house, carrying several electronic tablets filled with research data. She looked tired and frustrated as she sat down beside Damon. Commander Troy Williams, the man in charge of keeping their colony safe, walked over to join them. "Did you figure out anything new about how those dragon creatures talk to each other?" Troy asked Kenya, pointing toward the distant mountains where strange lights sometimes flickered at night. Kenya shook her head slowly. "No luck again today. I've been trying for months to understand their telepathic communication, but it's like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing." Damon kept staring at the boundary stones that marked where human territory ended and the dragon territory began. Beyond those stones lived the Drachari, massive creatures that looked like dragons from old Earth stories. They were as big as spaceships and had lived on this planet for thousands of years before humans ever arrived. Most people in New Haven Colony were afraid of the Drachari. Parents told their children scary stories about them. Security guards always carried weapons when they went near the boundary. But Damon felt something completely different when he watched them moving gracefully through the crystal forests. While others saw monsters, he saw something beautiful and mysterious. The boy's parents, James and Tanya Rivers, had died in a terrible mining accident 3 years ago. Damon had been there that day, had seen everything happen. The shock of losing them so suddenly had done something to his mind. From that day forward, he simply could not speak. The doctors said there was nothing physically wrong with his throat or tongue. The trauma had locked his voice away somewhere deep inside him. Dr. Kenya Johnson had been his parents' friend and colleague. She was a scientist who studied alien languages and communication. When Damon had nowhere else to go, she took him in without hesitation. She treated him like family, never pressuring him to talk, always patient with his silence. "The Drachari have been unusually active lately," Commander Williams said, checking his security reports. "Our sensors pick up more movement near the boundary stones. Some of the miners are getting nervous." Kenya nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe they're curious about us too. We've been neighbors for 2 years now, but we still know almost nothing about each other." Damon listened to their conversation while watching the shadows grow longer. In the distance, he could see the faint glow of Drachari settlements nestled between the crystal formations. Sometimes, late at night, he would sit by his bedroom window and watch their lights dance across the mountain slopes. Other children had nightmares about the dragons, but Damon found their presence oddly comforting. Recently, something strange had been happening in his mind. During quiet moments like this, he would feel a gentle pulling sensation, as if something was trying to reach him from far away. It felt warm and peaceful, not scary at all. He had not told Kenya about these feelings because he could not find the words to explain them, even if he could speak. The twin suns finally disappeared behind the mountains, and the evening sky filled with brilliant stars. Damon stood up slowly and walked to the edge of the porch, closer to the boundary stones. The pulling feeling in his mind grew stronger, and for just a moment, he thought he heard something like a whisper carried on the wind. But when he turned to look at Kenya and Commander Williams, they were still talking normally, showing no sign that they had heard anything unusual. As the 3 of them prepared to go inside for the night, Damon took one last look toward the crystal mountains. Something important was coming. He could feel it building like a storm on the horizon, and somehow, he knew his long silence was about to end. The supply trucks were supposed to return to New Haven Colony before sunset, but something had gone terribly wrong. Damon Rivers found himself completely alone in the middle of a massive red dust storm that had swept across the Drachma Desert without warning. The howling wind made it impossible to see more than a few feet in any direction, and the stinging sand felt like tiny needles against his skin. Security Chief Blake Thompson had been leading the search and rescue team, but somehow Damon had gotten separated from the group during the chaos of the storm. His small communication device had stopped working completely, probably damaged by all the dust and electrical interference from the strange crystal formations scattered across the landscape. These towering crystal spires hummed with a mysterious energy that made his teeth hurt and filled the air with an odd buzzing sound. Damon stumbled through the swirling red clouds, trying to find shelter behind one of the larger crystal formations. His heart was beating fast, not from fear of being lost, but from something else entirely. The pulling sensation in his mind that he had been feeling for weeks was now stronger than ever, almost like someone was calling his name from very far away. As he pressed his back against the smooth surface of a crystal tower, waiting for the storm to pass, something incredible happened. The red dust began to part like curtains being pulled aside, and through the gap emerged a shadow so enormous that it blocked out what little light remained in the stormy sky. The creature that appeared before him was unlike anything Damon had ever imagined, even in his wildest dreams. It was definitely one of the Dracari, but this one was ancient beyond measure. Its scales were deep emerald green with streaks of silver that seemed to glow with their own inner light. The dragon's head alone was bigger than the entire supply truck they had been traveling in. Its wings, even though they were folded against its massive body, stretched wider than the colony's main building. But it was the creature's eyes that truly amazed Damon. They were bright golden orbs, each one as large as the dinner plates they used in the colony cafeteria. Those ancient eyes studied the boy with an intelligence that was clearly far beyond anything human. There was wisdom in that gaze, the kind that came from living for thousands of years and seeing the rise and fall of entire civilizations. Then something happened that changed everything. Instead of hearing words with his ears like normal speech, Damon felt a voice speaking directly inside his mind. It was warm and deep, like distant thunder, but somehow gentle at the same time. Damon Rivers, child of sorrow and silence. Why do you walk alone in places where your people fear to go? The boy's eyes went wide with shock. Not only was this enormous dragon speaking to him telepathically, but it somehow knew his name and seemed to understand his tragic past. For 3 long years, Damon had been trapped in silence, unable to speak even when he desperately wanted to. But now, without even thinking about it, his mind responded directly to the ancient creature. "I'm not scared of you," his thoughts replied clearly, as if he had been having telepathic conversations his whole life. The great dragon's mental voice carried a tone of complete amazement. "This cannot be possible. Humans do not possess the ability to speak through the deep speech. Your minds are too simple, too limited." But here was undeniable proof that everything the Dracari believed about humans was wrong. This small, silent boy was communicating through pure thought, using the same ancient telepathic language that only the most powerful dragons had mastered over centuries of training and meditation. The dragon, whose name was Korath the Eternal, had lived for over 3,000 years. In all that time, he had never encountered any being other than his own kind who could touch the deep speech. Yet this traumatized human child was doing it naturally, as easily as breathing. "How long have you carried this gift, young one?" Korath asked gently through their mental connection. "I don't know," Damon replied honestly. "I've been feeling something strange in my head for a while now, like someone calling me. But I never knew it was this." The ancient dragon realized he was witnessing something that would change both their species forever. Dr. Kenya Johnson stared at the computer screen showing Damon's brain scans, her hands shaking slightly as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. The colorful images displayed neural activity patterns that should have been impossible for any human being. She called Colony Administrator Vincent Carter over to her workstation, pointing at the unusual readings with barely controlled excitement. "This doesn't make any sense at all," she whispered, afraid that speaking too loudly might somehow make the incredible data disappear. When Damon saw his parents die in that mining accident, the trauma didn't just make him stop talking. It actually changed his brain in ways we've never seen before. Vincent leaned closer to examine the scans, his eyebrows rising higher with each passing second. The brain imaging showed new connections forming between different parts of Damon's mind, creating pathways that simply didn't exist in normal human anatomy. It was as if the boy's tragic experience had unlocked hidden potential that had been sleeping inside him his entire life. "Are you saying the accident somehow gave him new abilities?" Vincent asked, trying to understand the complex medical information displayed on the screen. "That's exactly what I'm saying," Kenya replied, scrolling through more test results. The shock of losing his parents triggered something deep in his brain structure. These neural pathways are completely new to science. While the adults were discovering the truth about his changed brain, Damon was having secret meetings with Korath the Eternal far beyond the colony's protective boundaries. Every few days, the boy would slip away from his daily routine and walk to a hidden spot near the crystal formations where the ancient dragon would be waiting for him. These conversations were unlike anything either of them had ever experienced before. Korath had been alive for over 3,000 years, had spoken with countless members of his own species, and had observed many different alien races throughout his long lifetime. But never once had he encountered a human who could truly communicate through the deep speech. "Your people have a word for this kind of change." Korath's mental voice flowed gently through Damon's consciousness during one of their secret meetings. "They call it evolution. We Dracari have always believed that only our species was blessed with the ability to speak mind to mind. Perhaps we have been wrong about what humans can really do." The ancient dragon was beginning to understand that humanity might possess hidden depths that no one had ever suspected. For thousands of years, the Drakari had looked down on humans as a younger, simpler species. They saw them as clever with technology but lacking in spiritual and mental development. Damon's abilities were forcing Korath to reconsider everything his people believed about human potential. Back at the colony, Nurse Destiny Williams had been taking care of Damon since the day his parents died. She had watched him grow from a traumatized 8-year-old into the quiet 12-year-old he was now. Recently, she had noticed significant changes in his behavior that worried and intrigued her at the same time. "There's something different about Damon lately," she mentioned to Dr. Kenya Johnson during their weekly medical review. "He's more aware of everything happening around him, more focused and alert than he's been in years. But he's still not speaking out loud at all." Kenya listened carefully to Destiny's observations while thinking about the brain scan results she had discovered. The boy was clearly changing in ways that went far beyond normal childhood development. His mind was becoming something new and extraordinary, even though his voice remained locked in silence. "Have you noticed him doing anything unusual?" Kenya asked, wondering if there were other signs of his developing abilities. "Well, sometimes I catch him staring off toward the boundary stones for hours at a time," Destiny replied thoughtfully. "And there have been a few times when I swear he knew exactly what I was thinking before I even said anything. It's probably just coincidence, but it feels like he can read my mind sometimes." Kenya's heart began beating faster as she realized that Damon's telepathic abilities might not be limited to communicating with the Drakari. If he could sense human thoughts as well, then his gift was even more powerful than anyone had imagined. Humanity was about to discover that they possessed capabilities that could change their understanding of what it meant to be human. The boy who had lost his voice was developing a new way to communicate that was more powerful than any spoken language. The first sign that something terrible was coming happened on what seemed like a perfectly normal Tuesday morning. Damon was eating breakfast with Dr. Kenya Johnson when all the communication devices in their home suddenly went completely silent. The radio that usually played soft music during meals made no sound at all. Kenya's research computer lost its connection to the colony's main network. Even the simple intercom system that connected their house to the medical center stopped working entirely. "That's strange," Kenya muttered, tapping her communication tablet to see if it would respond. Everything just died at once. Across New Haven Colony, the same thing was happening in every building and every home. Security Chief Blake Thompson tried to contact his patrol teams but heard only empty static through his radio. Colony Administrator Vincent Carter attempted to send messages to other human settlements on different parts of the planet, but received no replies. It was as if every piece of technology designed for communication had suddenly forgotten how to work. The colonists gathered in the main square, confused and worried about what could cause such a complete communication blackout. Some people thought it might be interference from the crystal formations that covered much of Drakmo's landscape. Others wondered if the Drakari had somehow developed new technology to disrupt human electronics. But the real answer came from above. Damon looked up at the sky and saw something that made his blood run cold. Dark shapes were descending through Drakmo's atmosphere, moving with mechanical precision that was completely different from anything natural. These were not ships built by humans or dragons. They were something else entirely, something alien and hostile. The vessels were massive, each one larger than the entire New Haven colony. Their surfaces were black and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, making them look like holes cut out of the sky itself. As they came closer, people could see that these ships had an organic quality to them, as if they were grown rather than built. Strange tendrils and appendages writhed along their hulls like the arms of some gigantic sea creature. "Void swarm," whispered Dr. Kenya Johnson, her face pale with recognition and terror. She had read about them in classified military reports from other frontier worlds. They were a species that traveled from planet to planet, consuming natural resources and leaving nothing but dead rocks behind them. The alien ships began landing in strategic positions around the crystal formations that dotted the landscape. Almost immediately, smaller creatures poured out of them like insects from a disturbed nest. These beings moved on multiple legs and had bodies that seemed to shift and change shape constantly. They carried weapons that fired energy blasts capable of melting solid stone. Colonel Patricia Hayes, the highest-ranking military officer in the colony, quickly organized the human defense forces. But without functioning communication systems, coordinating any kind of effective resistance was nearly impossible. Soldiers could not contact each other across different parts of the settlement. Evacuation plans that depended on radio coordination became useless. Meanwhile, the Drakari were facing the same communication problems. Korath the Eternal tried to reach other members of his species through their traditional telepathic networks, but discovered that the Void Swarm's technology was somehow jamming even their ancient mental connections. The dragons who had lived on this world for thousands of years found themselves isolated and unable to work together effectively. Damon felt the chaos and fear of both communities through his developing telepathic abilities. The panic of the human colonists hit his mind like physical pain, while the confusion of the Drakari created a constant background noise in his thoughts. But unlike everyone else, his unique mental gifts were not being blocked by the alien interference. "I can still hear them," he said quietly to Kenya, speaking aloud for the first time since his encounter with Korath in the Desert Storm. His voice was rough from years of disuse, but the words were clear and determined. Kenya stared at him in amazement. After 3 years of silence, Damon was finally speaking again. "Hey who?" she asked urgently. "Both sides," Damon replied, his young face serious with newfound purpose. "The humans and the dragons. Everyone else is cut off from each other, but I can still connect with their minds. The aliens can't stop me because they don't understand how my telepathy works." As explosions began echoing across the crystal valleys and laser fire lit up the evening sky, Damon realized that his strange gift might be the only thing that could save both species. The boy who had been silent for so long was about to become the most important voice on the entire planet. But first, he would have to convince two very different peoples to trust each other and work together against an enemy that threatened to destroy them all. The real test of his abilities was about to begin. Damon Rivers stood on top of the colony's tallest building, looking out over a battlefield that stretched as far as his eyes could see. The Void Swarm had been attacking for 2 days straight, and both the humans and Drakari were losing badly. Without being able to communicate with each other, neither side could mount an effective defense against the alien invaders. The 12-year-old boy closed his eyes and reached out with his mind, feeling for the thoughts and emotions of everyone around him. What he discovered was both amazing and terrifying. His telepathic abilities had grown far beyond anything he had imagined possible. He could sense the minds of every human in the colony, from Colonel Patricia Hayes planning desperate military strategies to Engineer Leon Davis trying to repair damaged equipment. At the same time, he could feel the ancient wisdom of Korath and dozens of other Drakari warriors scattered across the Crystal Mountains. "I can connect them all," Damon whispered to Dr. Kenya Johnson, who had climbed up to the rooftop with him. "I can make them hear each other." Kenya looked at the boy with a mixture of pride and worry. She knew that what he was attempting had never been done before in the history of either species. "Are you sure you're strong enough? Connecting that many minds at once could be dangerous for you." Damon nodded with determination that seemed far too mature for someone his age. "It's the only way we're going to survive this. They need to work together, and I'm the only one who can make that happen." Taking a deep breath, Damon opened his mind wider than he ever had before. His consciousness spread out like ripples on a pond, touching first the humans closest to him, then reaching further to contact the Drakari in their mountain strongholds. The sensation was overwhelming at first, like trying to listen to 100 different conversations at the same time. But gradually, Damon learned to organize the mental connections. He became a living communication hub, allowing Colonel Hayes to speak directly with Korath the Eternal for the first time in either of their lives. The human military officer was shocked to discover that the dragon she had always feared was actually intelligent, wise, and just as concerned about the Void Swarm invasion as she was. "Your weapons are powerful but lack precision." Korath's mental voice flowed through Damon's telepathic link to reach Colonel Hayes. "Our fire breath can destroy their ships, but we need your people to guide us to the weak points. Our sensors show vulnerable spots in their hull plating," Hayes replied through the same mental connection. "If we coordinate our attacks, we might actually have a chance." As the battle continued, Damon's role became even more crucial. He connected Engineer Leon Davis's technical knowledge with ancient Drakari understanding of the crystal formations that powered much of the planet's energy systems. Through the boy's telepathic bridge, Leon learned that the crystals could be used as weapons if properly activated, while the dragons discovered new ways to use human technology to amplify their natural abilities. Mechanic Ruby Thompson found herself sharing tactical information with a young Drakari warrior named Zephyr, coordinating strike patterns that neither species could have developed alone. Nurse Destiny Williams, working frantically to treat wounded colonists, received healing knowledge from Korath that helped her save lives that would have been lost otherwise. The turning point came when Damon realized he could do more than just connect individual minds. He began linking entire groups of fighters, allowing dozens of humans and dragons to coordinate their movements with perfect timing. Through his expanding telepathic network, a human pilot could know exactly when a Drakari would breathe fire, while the dragon could sense precisely where the pilot's missiles would strike. The Void Swarm, which had easily defeated both species when they fought separately, found themselves facing something completely unexpected. The combined tactics of human ingenuity and Drakari ancient wisdom created battle strategies that the aliens could not predict or counter effectively. As the last enemy ship crashed into the Crystal Valleys, Damon collapsed from exhaustion. His mind had been stretched to its absolute limits, connecting hundreds of different thoughts and coordinating complex battle plans for hours without rest. But when he opened his eyes, he saw something beautiful. Humans and Drakari were working together to put out fires and rescue survivors from the wreckage. Colonel Hayes was standing beside Korath, both of them planning how to strengthen their new alliance. The two species that had lived as suspicious neighbors for years were now treating each other as trusted partners. "How do you feel?" Dr. Kenya Johnson asked as she helped Damon sit up. The boy smiled, his voice clear and strong. "I feel like I finally found what I was meant to do. My voice was never really gone. It was just waiting for the right time to bring everyone together."